There's something wrong with her. She's disturbed, she's unhappy, and she thinks it's about feminism and the patriarchy and about abortion. But the reality is she's just not stable, like the majority of people in Hollywood. They're just not stable human beings.
Rachel Zegler just dropped a digital bombshell that sent the internet into absolute meltdown. In a move no one saw coming, but everyone now can't stop talking about, Rachel publicly declared that she's stepping away from Hollywood indefinitely. Yes, the Rachel Zegler, the girl once hailed as the next Disney darling, has seemingly had enough. Her goodbye message, posted late last night, wasn't your usual sugar-coated PR farewell. No, this was raw, emotional, and laced.
Because you just can't close your mouth. You just can't be sane, even when you do open your mouth. I think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film, but rather, she deserves to be in a padded cell.
With enough cryptic shade to ignite 1,000 Reddit threads. The caption, just one line. Sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you can do. No emoji, no tag, just vibes and chaos. Within minutes, hashtags like ZeglerQuits, DisneyDisaster, and RachelOut started trending. Fans were stunned, critics were smug, and the industry, oh, they were scrambling. Is this real? One casting agent tweeted. Please tell me she's not serious. But it wasn't just the post, it was the timing. Just days after yet another viral clip resurfaced of Rachel defending her Snow White comments, again, and mere hours before Disney was allegedly set to unveil a new promo campaign for the film.
You see how young these women are, like this woman, Rachel Zegler. She looks about 12 years old in that clip, who plays the new Snow White.
Coincidence? Girl, this is Hollywood. Nothing is ever a coincidence. Her message hit harder because it came after years of controversy, clapbacks, and carefully managed appearances. And for a moment, it didn't feel like damage control. It felt like a mic drop. A thank you, but I'm done moment wrapped in soft lighting and a blurry photo carousel of sunsets, black coffee, and a single empty director's chair.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
Fans flooded the comments with a strange mix of "We love you, Queen," and "Good riddance." But buried beneath the digital noise, one truth began to settle. This wasn't a publicity stunt. Rachel Zegler may have actually just quit Hollywood, and her reasons might be more complicated and more explosive than anyone expected. Let's rewind the reel for a second, because Rachel Zegler's Hollywood spiral didn't happen in one day. Oh no, this story has layers, like an overpriced premiere gown stitched together with tension, tone-deaf tweets, and a studio in full-blown crisis mode. So how did a promising breakout star go from Disney's leading lady to the industry's biggest do not cast warning label? The answer lies somewhere between public missteps, clashing values, and a PR storm that kept blowing back harder each time they tried to sweep it away.
It's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign.
It started with what should have been a dream role. Rachel was cast as Snow White. Snow White in Disney's high-stakes live-action remake of its most iconic film. But instead of the usual fanfare and Disney magic, the internet reacted like someone had poisoned the apple. Why? Because Rachel didn't just step into the role, she practically kicked the door off its hinges. Early press tour clips showed her laughing off the original 1937 movie, calling it weird, outdated, and not empowering. She even scoffed at the love story, saying the prince was basically a stalker. Bold? Sure. But for many lifelong Disney fans, it felt like she was dragging their childhood through the mud.
People have real problems, and no one gives a shit if she got paid for 17 instead of 18 on her multi-million-dollar salary, which is not calculated by the hour.
And it didn't stop there. One viral soundbite had her saying, "This isn't 1937 anymore," in a tone so dismissive it practically begged for backlash. That one line became meme gold, but also meme poison. People weren't laughing with her. They were coming for her. The backlash was swift and relentless, and suddenly Rachel went from rising star to social media's favorite punching bag. TikTokers mocked her. Commentators called her ungrateful. Even casual Disney fans started side-eyeing the film, and somewhere in a boardroom at Disney HQ, you can bet Bob Iger was blinking at a very red graph labeled public sentiment. But here's where it got really messy. Just when her team tried to soften the edges and reel back the controversy, Rachel doubled down. More interviews surfaced where she criticized traditional princess narratives and joked about being paid, "For all 18 hours I'm in that Snow White dress." That clip alone caused a mini implosion. Viewers accused her of entitlement, and studio execs allegedly lost their minds. Imagine investing hundreds of millions into a fairy tale reboot only to watch your lead actress go viral for mocking it.
She continued celebrating herself by posting that she's in the #1 movie in the world, which is a remarkable thing to post when you are the laughingstock of an entire industry. This is what narcissism looks like. Narcissism for 200.
Then came the politics. Rachel used her platform to voice strong opinions on global issues, which, on its own, isn't unusual for a celebrity. But timing is everything. Right after Disney dropped a new trailer in a desperate attempt to rebrand the movie's image, Rachel posted a political message that reignited online fury. Some saw it as bold, others saw it as reckless. But everyone saw it, and that's the point. It overshadowed everything else. The studio's efforts, the crew's work, even the film itself. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Sources claimed Disney's PR team had to do emergency media coaching with Rachel, advising her to tone down interviews and post more positive content. One insider even claimed she was asked to post childhood photos in Disney princess costumes to soften her image. And she did, but it didn't land. The internet, once again, wasn't buying it. They labeled it damage control, plain and simple.
That's one interview clip that you read the quote from, but she's gone on to talk about this film numerous times, how she once thought Snow White was creepy, she doesn't like the prince, she thinks she should get paid more because she has to wear that dress, she should get paid for streaming, for every hour she has to wear the dress. I mean, talk about biting the hand that feeds you.
And just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, Peter Dinklage happened. His now infamous critique of Disney's remake, slamming it for reinforcing stereotypes with the Seven Dwarfs, sent shockwaves through the press. But instead of clarifying or distancing herself, rumors swirled that Rachel privately blamed Dinklage for sabotaging the film. Whether true or not, the Whisper campaign only added to the narrative. Rachel Zegler was too controversial, too reactive, too risky. Hollywood doesn't do second chances when the money's on the line, and with the film's projected box office sinking faster than a poisoned apple, the industry began backing away. Projects she was once attached to were suddenly on hold. Co-stars and collaborators, quiet. Studio enthusiasm, gone. Slowly, subtly, the doors started closing, and Rachel, whether by choice or force, started stepping away. That goodbye post, it didn't come out of nowhere. It came after months, maybe years, of feeling the heat from an industry that once embraced her, and then very publicly turned cold.
That she believes that she should be able to express herself and speak her truth, or whatever nonsense, regardless of the consequences to everybody else.
Looking back now, some fans are asking a brutal question. Was this film ever going to succeed? Because once you step back from the chaos, from the backlash and the headlines and the TikTok stitches, it starts to feel like Rachel Zegler was handed a poisoned apple from the very beginning. The Snow White remake didn't just have a casting problem, it had an identity crisis. And no amount of glossy trailers or empowerment monologues could mask the fact that this movie might have been set up to flop from day one. It started with Disney's decision to not just remake Snow White, but reimagine it aggressively. Gone Were the Seven Dwarfs replaced, allegedly, with magical woodland creatures or some CGI chaos that no one could quite explain.
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable. There's some clip of her on the internet in her Snow White outfit saying, "Every hour I am in the outfit of Snow White wearing the dress. All 18 hours, I deserve to be paid for every single one."
The romantic plotline stripped down to maybe status. The prince rebranded. The entire tone of the movie, once centered around love, kindness, and fairy tale simplicity, was reshaped into something modern, fierce, and, depending on who you ask, completely unrecognizable. Now add Rachel Zegler to that blender. A talented singer with Broadway chops and a Spielberg seal of approval, sure, but also someone who had never carried a major blockbuster on her own. Pair that with the studio's aggressive marketing pivot and ongoing script changes, and suddenly, Rachel wasn't just playing Snow White, she was the face of a rebranded Disney experiment, one that was already drawing heat before a single frame hit the screen.
EV Magazine wrote on X, when you compare how Rachel Zegler spoke about Snow White to how other actresses who played live-action Disney princesses spoke about their character, really underlines just how poorly she carried herself.
Insiders began leaking that Disney was panicking early in the process. Rumors circulated of late-stage rewrites, reshoots that cost millions, and on-set confusion about what tone the film was actually going for. Some days it was girl boss feminism, other days it was whimsical nostalgia. In the end, it felt like a patchwork quilt of clashing visions, none of which stitched together. One editor allegedly joked that there were 5 different movies in the cutting room, and no one could agree which one audiences wanted to see. And then there was Rachel herself. While Disney tried to polish the film with dreamy posters and inspirational one-liners, Rachel was out in interviews calling the prince a stalker and comparing the original film to outdated propaganda. Fans didn't know what to think. Was she joking? Was she being honest? Was this supposed to be a satire of the original or a loving homage? Even she seemed unsure.
If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what? Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're gonna bring another person to play this role because you just screwed this thing up.
And when your leading lady looks confused, the audience usually follows. Still, there were moments where things almost worked. A teaser clip dropped months before release, and to be fair, it looked stunning. Costumes, set design, visuals, all top tier. Gal Gadot's evil queen stole the spotlight in every shot, and some fans dared to hope maybe this will actually be good. But those flickers of optimism were quickly smothered by another PR flare-up. This time, Rachel's pay comment, "If I'm wearing the Snow White dress for 18 hours, I want to be paid for 18 hours. That line ricocheted across social media faster than any official trailer. Context? Doesn't matter. By that point, the narrative was already out of Disney's hands. Rachel wasn't being seen as a strong lead actress anymore. She was being painted as ungrateful, overpaid, and out of touch.
That's the message that they wrote a script that's telling girls, I don't need nobody tells me. I'm a 20-year-old girl, so obviously I should run my mouth all the time. That's the theme of the new Snow White.
No, really?
Yes. Now,
it's not the same story?
No.
The fact that she was probably underpaid compared to her male counterparts didn't stand a chance against the meme machine. By the time Disney delayed the film's release, fans weren't surprised. The studio claimed it was for quality control, but insiders whispered it was a full-blown panic pause. Too many bad headlines, too many fanboy YouTubers making takedown videos, and too much internal confusion about what the film even was anymore. Some people in the industry started using words like unwatchable and tone-deaf. Others went further, calling it Disney's biggest branding blunder since John Carter. And at the center of it all, Rachel, trying to navigate a film that was constantly shifting under her feet, trying to represent a character she clearly had mixed feelings about, trying to toe the line between Gen Z activist and Disney-approved poster girl. It's no wonder she snapped.
No, Prince or a different kind of Prince?
I'm sure a lot of people will assume it's a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude.
Yep.
All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Who the hell are you to say all of Andrew's scenes could get cut? Like, who are you?
Oh my God.
Are you Disney?
Whether she quit on her own terms or was gently nudged out, the truth is this. The Snow White remake was never built on stable ground. The foundation cracked early, and by the time cameras stopped rolling, it was already sinking. If you thought the public mess was bad, wait until you hear what allegedly went down behind the scenes. Because while the internet roasted Rachel Zegler with memes and think pieces, the real meltdown was happening in Disney's executive towers. Insiders describe it as a full-blown internal crisis, with top brass reportedly freaking out as the Snow White backlash spiraled beyond anything they had prepared for. Imagine it. Meetings called at midnight, emails flying with subject lines like urgent Ziegler narrative control, and Bob Iger himself allegedly asking, do we have an exit plan? The whispers started weeks before the official delay.
To address the elephant in the room. I'm the hottest person in the world.
According to anonymous Disney staffers leaking to industry blogs, higher-ups were deeply concerned about Rachel's interviews, but felt trapped. Firing her outright would trigger a PR firestorm and possibly a lawsuit. But keeping her in the spotlight was clearly tanking public sentiment. One executive allegedly floated the idea of cutting her press appearances altogether, but that backfired when fans noticed her absence and started speculating even more. You can't win when your lead actress becomes a lightning rod, and Disney knew it. Then came the reshoots. Oh yes, the infamous reshoots. Originally branded as enhancements, they were anything but. Entire sequences were reportedly reworked after early test audiences gave confused, even hostile feedback. Rachel's tone was a common criticism. Too sarcastic, too detached, too not Snow White.
For Snow White, it's coming to terms with finding herself and finding her inner voice and finding a sense of agency so that she can be a just ruler and a wonderful queen because there's another one in town.
Rumors spread that Disney even hired a second director to soften certain scenes. And guess what? That only caused more chaos. Imagine being an actor trying to play a character when the tone changes every other week. It was whiplash, on and off the set. Meanwhile, Gal Gadot, who played the evil queen, was quietly doing damage control of her own. Industry sources claimed she began distancing herself from the film after seeing the online vitriol directed at Rachel. Interviews with Gal suddenly shifted focus to her other projects. One red carpet moment even went viral when she was asked about Snow White, and she paused a little too long before offering a generic "it was a great experience" response. The message was clear: Gal wasn't going down with this ship. Behind closed doors, some of Rachel's biggest allies reportedly started backing away too.
But it's hard. And it's lonely. It's very lonely. I just know that if that loneliness can exist, so can other things, and I will be okay.
Her publicist, once described as ride or die, was now vetting every single tweet, every photo caption, every offhand comment. The girl who once went live on Instagram without a second thought was suddenly nowhere to be found without a polished, pre-approved script. And fans noticed. They started posting side-by-side clips, old Rachel versus new Rachel. The shift in tone was jarring. The spontaneity, gone. The fire, dimmed. In its place, a woman who looked like she'd been through a media boot camp run by caffeine-addicted lawyers. And then came the leaks. Oh, the glorious, messy leaks. One insider claimed that Bob Iger himself was furious after a behind-the-scenes video of Rachel joking around on set resurfaced online just days after she promised to be more respectful in interviews. Another report alleged that there was a private conversation, a final sit-down, if you will, where Rachel was asked point-blank if she wanted to continue with Disney at all.
I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats.
Some say she said yes, others say she stayed silent, but everyone agrees. That meeting changed everything, because not long after, internal documents suggested that Disney was exploring contingency plans, recasting, quiet exit strategy, PR rebranding, and perhaps the most telling clue, merch. Rumors swirled that new batches of Snow White dolls were being pulled or redesigned. One TikTok user even noticed her local Disney store removing promotional materials with Rachel's face on them. Coincidence? Maybe. But in Hollywood, subtle moves like that speak volumes. What's more, some insiders say Rachel's departure wasn't even her decision, that behind her dramatic goodbye post was a carefully negotiated settlement. No drama, no lawsuits, just a clean exit and a gentle request: don't make this uglier than it already is. If true, that means Rachel Zegler didn't just quit Hollywood. She was quietly shown the door, with a smile, a check, and a firm handshake that said, "Thank you for your service. Please don't tweet again." Whether voluntary or forced, the fallout behind the scenes was unmistakable. A project once marketed as Disney's next cultural reset became a textbook example of how fast a film and a career can unravel when the messaging doesn't match the magic.
I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
If I'm going to stand in a dress all day long, we do that, women do that anyway. You know what? We walk around in dresses and we don't get paid for it, Rachel.
And while fans on the outside kept debating if Rachel was a misunderstood rebel or a self-sabotaging diva, those inside the studio were just trying to plug the leaks and survive the storm. The moment Rachel Zegler hit post on her goodbye message, the internet did what it does best. It split in two, and what followed wasn't just a trending topic, it was an all-out culture clash. Half the internet lit virtual candles and mourned the loss of a misunderstood queen. The other half, they threw confetti. To them, this wasn't a goodbye, it was a victory lap. Depending on who you ask, Rachel Zegler is either the tragic heroine of a Hollywood gone cold or the cautionary tale of what happens when ego meets entitlement. On one side stood her defenders. And they were loud. These were the fans who had followed her since West Side Story, who remembered her teary-eyed thank you posts, her sweet Disney auditions, and her Broadway covers that once gave TikTok goosebumps. They saw the backlash as disproportionate, even cruel. She's 22, they reminded everyone. She's figuring it out in public. They pointed out the double standard. When a young male actor speaks his mind, he's bold. When Rachel does it, she's difficult. She's not the villain. One tweet read, "She's the scapegoat for a studio's mess." But the other side, oh, they had receipts. Entire YouTube channels sprang up overnight, compiling every clip, every snarky comment, every eye roll she gave during press junkets. Some fans felt personally offended by how she spoke about Snow White, as if mocking the original film meant mocking them.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
And then came the infamous Free Palestine post, shared right after Disney's latest trailer drop. The timing ignited a new wave of backlash. Even some former supporters began to side-eye her, wondering if she was deliberately self-sabotaging or just oblivious. Then there was the identity firestorm. Yes, it got that messy. The Latina debate flared up when Rachel, who proudly identifies as Colombian American, was accused by online trolls of faking her background. Why? Because her name didn't sound Latina enough. What followed was a cringeworthy spiral where she was allegedly asked in interviews to prove her heritage, prompting her now viral clapback. What? You want me to bring in my abuelita as a witness? Some applauded her sass. Others found it dismissive. But one thing was clear. Rachel Zegler wasn't just fighting for her role, she was fighting for her identity. And still, the internet couldn't agree. One moment she was Rachel the Revolutionary, too progressive for Disney's glossy image. The next, she was Rachel the Diva, biting the hand that signed her $1 million contract. It became less about the movie and more about what she represented.
You know, I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it, you didn't direct it, you have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the job.
To some, she was a symbol of a younger generation demanding change, refusing to sugarcoat things just to appease fans. To others, she was a warning, a performer who forgot that acting and activism don't always mix, especially when you're wearing the Disney crown. Even within Hollywood circles, reactions were murky. A few fellow actors quietly liked her farewell post. Others stayed suspiciously silent. One tabloid claimed that a well-known director Rachel once worked with unfollowed her on social media, and yes, people noticed. The silence said what the statements didn't. Rachel had become polarizing, toxic even, the kind of name agents start whispering about in nervous tones. Maybe not worth the risk, and yet, in the eye of the storm, Rachel still had her core supporters. Fans who reposted old interviews where she spoke with warmth and excitement about being a Disney princess. Fans who saw her tears during stage performances and said, "That's the real her." They believed the industry failed her, that she was handed a messy script, saddled with studio pressure, and left to face the wolves alone. To them, Rachel didn't quit. She escaped. The truth, it's somewhere in the gray. Maybe she was both. Maybe she said the wrong things, at the wrong times, in the wrong way. But maybe she was also never given a chance to grow without a spotlight blinding her.
And they postponed the release of this thing, Ben, for a year because their star, Rachel Zegler, was so unlikable, told all Trump supporters that they could off, excuse me, but she did. That was just in November. They didn't even know she was going to do that one. Said she hated Snow White, mocked the fact that there was a prince and that she falls in love as opposed to leaning into her own power.
In an industry that turns actresses into icons and villains within a news cycle, Rachel Zegler became both. The one who dreamed of being Snow White as a kid, and then watched that dream devour her in real time. Now here's the question on everyone's lips. Did Rachel Zegler actually choose to walk away from Hollywood? Or did Hollywood make the decision for her? Because for a supposed retirement, her exit was suspiciously polished. No live video, no messy Instagram meltdown. Just a single cryptic sentence dropped like a mic, and then total radio silence. That's not a breakdown, that's a strategy. And if you believe the insiders, and oh, are they whispering? This quitting narrative may have been the final scene of a behind-the-scenes negotiation months in the making. Let's start with what we do know. Disney had a problem on its hands. Their $200 million Snow White reboot had gone from prestige fairy tale to full-blown meme fodder. And the person at the center of that PR inferno wasn't a producer or a writer or even the CGI dwarf who looked like he walked out of an AI nightmare. It was Rachel, the face of the brand, the one on the posters, the one in all the interviews, the one who couldn't seem to stop sparking headlines every time she opened her mouth.
Yeah, because there's nothing more effective than 19-year-olds educating the rest of the voting public while yelling, "Okay, boomer."
At first, the studio tried to contain it. They pulled her back from press junkets, allegedly recoached her media approach, and even delayed the film's release to buy time. But the damage was done. The public had turned. Every trailer drop became a Twitter roast. Every interview clip was dissected like it came from a crime scene. Even casual fans began asking, why does she seem like she hates the movie she's in? And according to multiple unconfirmed but suspiciously consistent rumors, that's When the studio began drafting the exit plan, one entertainment blogger claimed they heard whispers of a quiet buyout offer. No lawsuits, no firing, just a mutually beneficial uncoupling. Rachel would post a graceful goodbye. The studio would stay silent. Everyone moves on. Another source, allegedly close to the production, said the plan was to let Rachel walk away with her dignity intact. But here's the kicker. It only worked if she agreed to stay quiet. No tell-all interviews, no behind-the-scenes exposés. Just disappear. Sounds clean, right? But then, as always, the internet started noticing the cracks. Fans pointed out that Rachel hadn't been mentioned in any official Disney marketing for weeks. Her face was removed from some international promos. Toy packaging that once included her likeness now mysteriously featured only animated designs. Even her co-stars had gone oddly silent. No messages of support, no "we'll miss you," just silence, which in Hollywood is deafening. Meanwhile, a Reddit leak claimed that Disney had already begun internal discussions about recasting Snow White if the film underperformed. One name tossed around, Jenna Ortega. Yep, Wednesday herself, edgy, bankable, and, crucially, not already associated with an avalanche of controversy. Was it real? Who knows? But the fact that people believed it, that speaks volumes. Then there's the NDA theory. Some fans are convinced Rachel signed a non-disclosure agreement as part of her quiet exit. It would explain the total media blackout since her post. It would explain why Disney hasn't addressed her departure publicly, and it would explain why even Rachel, who once clapped back at every troll on Twitter, is suddenly playing mute while the internet has a field day dragging her name. Of course, there's another theory too, one that paints Rachel as the one still in control, that she saw the writing on the wall, that she realized no matter how hard she tried to fix things, the hate was never going to stop, that she decided to bow out before the industry could blacklist her first, a graceful exit before the curtain dropped entirely. But whether she quit or was pushed out the side door with a carefully crafted script in her hand, the effect is the same. Rachel Zegler has vanished from the front lines of Hollywood, and the vacuum she left behind is being filled with speculation, memes, and a quiet unease from an industry that knows it messed up just as much as she did. Because this isn't just a story about an actress leaving the stage. It's a story about the machine that built her up, then couldn't control her, then quietly erased her. If she left on her own, bold. If she was pushed, brutal. But either way, the show, as they say, must go on, with Rachel Zegler officially out of the spotlight and possibly out of Hollywood altogether. There's one looming question echoing through boardrooms, fan forums, and movie podcasts alike. Can Disney salvage this franchise? Or has Snow White become the studio's most expensive fairy tale flop? Because let's be real, this wasn't just a movie. This was supposed to be the movie, a symbolic remake of Disney's very first animated classic, the one that started it all, the film Walt Disney staked his reputation on back in 1937. Snow White wasn't just part of the brand, it was the brand. So, when Disney decided to reimagine it for a modern audience, the stakes couldn't have been higher. And unfortunately, the fallout from that gamble now resembles a shattered mirror with 7 million shards. So what went wrong? Well, it depends on who you ask. To the purists, the problem started the moment the studio decided to modernize the story by removing the romantic core, replacing the dwarfs, and turning a timeless heroine into a misunderstood symbol. They say Disney forgot what made the original special: the sweetness, the innocence, the fairy tale charm. Instead of preserving magic, they tried to inject messaging, and in the process, alienated the fans who would have bought tickets for nostalgia. Alone. To the progressives, Disney fumbled a golden opportunity to make a new kind of classic. The themes of agency, self-identity, and empowerment were there, but buried under a clumsy rollout and a studio too nervous to commit. They argue that the story could have been powerful if it hadn't been weighed down by internal contradictions, a miscast lead, and the relentless panic of trying to please everyone. Instead of telling a fresh story boldly, the film tried to tiptoe between eras and ended up falling flat. And then there's the question of the dwarfs. Or should we say, the lack of them? Because while Disney never officially confirmed how they were being handled, leaked set photos and concept art showed a cast of magical companions that didn't exactly resemble the original crew. Peter Dinklage's early critique, which called the inclusion of 7 dwarfs living in a cave backward and offensive, sent the studio into defensive overdrive. But in trying to appease his concerns without alienating fans of the original, Disney created something that satisfied neither. Instead of a clever reinvention or a respectful homage, what they delivered felt like a jumbled remix. One YouTuber summed it up perfectly. They tried to turn Snow White into a Marvel movie with musical numbers and forgot to bring the charm. And don't think Disney doesn't know all of this. Behind the scenes, the studio is reportedly very aware of the reputational hit they've taken. Executives are said to be reevaluating not just Snow White, but the entire strategy behind these live-action remakes. Because after a string of underperformers, Mulan, Pinocchio, and now Snow White, the trend is no longer looking like a golden goose. It's looking like a creative crisis. One exec allegedly told Variety that the company overestimated the public's appetite for reinterpretation. Translation? People didn't want reimaginings. They wanted the movies they loved, just shinier. But Disney gave them characters they barely recognized, plots that felt more like lectures than fairy tales, and actresses who seemed embarrassed to be there in the first place. That's where names like Jenna Ortega enter the conversation. Fans are already floating her as the emergency reboot for Snow White, a rising star with edge, charisma, and social media savvy. And let's face it, after Wednesday, Jenna's got the Gen Z fan base that Rachel never fully captured. Could she save the brand? Maybe. But even she would be walking into a landmine of expectations and bitterness. Because here's the thing, Snow White isn't just about one actress. It's about what happens when a legacy brand tries to rewrite its own origin story in real time. And after all the millions spent, the headlines made, and the drama spilled, one truth remains. This story was never going to be easy to retell. You can't just slap modern messaging onto a classic and expect magic. It has to feel earned. It has to feel right. And above all, it has to feel like Disney. So can the franchise be saved? Maybe, but only if Disney finally takes a long, hard look at what it's actually trying to do. Honor its past or run from it. Because right now, they're stuck in the middle, and audiences can feel it. And now we arrive at the fairy tale ending, except this one's not written yet. Because when the dust settles and the hashtags fade, the real question is this: what will be Rachel Zegler's legacy? Is she the misunderstood rebel who challenged Hollywood's fairy tale machine and got burned? Or is she the girl who flew too close to the spotlight and scorched everything in her path? The truth is, Rachel's departure didn't just end a press cycle, it left a vacuum. In the weeks since her exit, the silence has been loud. No new interviews, no red carpet appearances, no cryptic IG lives. Just that final post and a trail of stunned fans trying to make sense of what just happened. It almost feels final, like a curtain dropped mid-scene. But Hollywood never really lets anyone go, does it? And that's where the redemption arc theory starts gaining traction. Some believe this is just a temporary retreat, a strategic pause to let the outrage fade, the brand cool off, and Rachel re-emerge with a reinvented image. A gritty indie film, a surprise Netflix cameo, a tearful podcast confession that ends in applause and forgiveness. We've seen it before. Stars rise, fall, disappear, and return bigger than ever. But not everyone's buying that narrative. Others say this isn't a break, it's a blacklisting. That Disney may not be the only studio quietly crossing her name off future call sheets. That no matter how talented she is, casting her now comes with a PR nightmare that most execs simply won't risk. Not in a media climate where controversy spreads faster than trailers. And especially not when there are a dozen safer, quieter actresses waiting for their big break without the social media baggage. Then there's the middle ground, that Rachel won't be erased, but she won't be center stage either, a few years behind the scenes. Voice work, maybe even stage acting, a quieter life far from the headlines. Something tells us she's smart enough to know when to pull back, and maybe strong enough to come back on her own terms. But before we close the book, let's go back to the beginning, to that little girl who dressed up as Disney princesses, who once posted a grainy photo of herself in a yellow ball gown, beaming, eyes wide, holding a toy mirror like it was magic. That version of Rachel, the dreamer, the fan, the kid, was real. And that's what makes all of this so complicated, because somewhere between childhood dreams and studio politics, that girl got lost, and the world was too busy judging to notice. Some fans still believe in her. They see a talented young woman crushed under impossible expectations. They point to the chaos behind the scenes, the corporate meddling, the culture war battlefield she was thrown into, and say, she never stood a chance. Others think she had every chance, and blew it. The lines are drawn, the takes are hot, and the legacy still being written. But here's where you come in. Do you think Rachel Zegler was a misunderstood victim of the Hollywood machine, or did she sabotage her own career with arrogance and attitude? Was her message a genuine goodbye, or a strategic PR play? And most importantly, do you think she'll ever return? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear everything. Be honest, be wild, be respectful. This one's going in the archives. And if you found yourself hooked on this roller coaster, give that like button a tap, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next Hollywood shakeup. Because, trust me, the next bombshell is already brewing. And something tells me it might be even messier than this one.